What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video and today with a guide for the arena store. I often see the question, which hero should I get from there? Are 10 heroes in there and some of them are really good. But of course, if you're a new player, you might not know which ones, and now today we are going to answer that question. First of all, we're going to talk about how you can even acquire the currency for that, and then I will go in depth over every single hero that is in there, give you all of the information, what they are used for in the Season 2 Waves of Intrigue, and if they have any place in the meta at all at the moment. There will be timestamps down below, so if you want the specific info for only one of those heroes, you can find that through the timestamps. And there will be a summary at the end, so if you don't want to hear the details about every single hero, you can basically get a short version of that and just get the info that you need, and maybe come back later if you want to hear the details then. Starting off, arena coins. Arena coins are the currency that is used here, and it is rewarded through the arena, the general PvP game mode. The PvP game mode right here, the arena is not regularly adjusted to the seasons, so you will notice that the seasonal artifacts and stuff are not available in here. What is important here is your rank. My rank is currently champion. There are multiple ranks in here, the highest being the top 5 champions. Which is pretty hard to get. And you can see there are daily rewards right here, 840 arena coins for champions, and there are weekly rewards as well, a bunch of cosmetics and also a bunch of arena coins. So to improve your arena coin gain through this, you will want to have a very nice and very high rank in PvP. So watching some PvP tutorials, probably a good idea. If you are on a new server, I in general recommend pushing up here as fast as possible, as you can get the first time rewards pretty easily. It's one of my first videos I made about PvP, where you can check this out. Other than that, there's once a week or weekly a challenge where for 20 completed matches you get a total of 2000 guild coins. It's reset weekly. You can see the countdown is on 5 days, 9 hours for me, and you should try to complete this to get those 2000 arena coins as well. Matches in general or directly don't offer arena coins as a reward. So you just get the completion for the weekly challenges. This is basically your way to get arena coins. There is no other way, as far as I'm aware, to get them, but still it is worthwhile to go through that, as we can also see there are a lot of stellar crystals in here as well. You can get twilight essence, so in general is quite a good way. If you want to, by the way, when you can get the champion store, you have to achieve the champion rank to unlock it. Starting off with the first hero, this is Cassadee. Cassadee, a light bearer hero, one of the heroes that you don't really see too much gameplay, but every now and then she pops up and is quite insane. Let's go over her skills. Cassadee is a light bearer hero mage, which is kind of already a rarer thing. She is one of the best light bearer heroes at the moment, actually, which is insane because you rarely see her in the meta. Her thing are the big waves. She was featured in some of the early trailers for AFK Journey. Her ult is like a big wave that pushes enemies back, deals some damage to them, but that is really not her main thing. It was kind of shown as her main thing. Later on, once you upgrade her to M+, you will, or Mythic Plus, you will notice that there is a way better thing that she can do, and this is the Mythic Plus +10 upgrade. The +10 upgrade to her weapon allows her to cast Undercurrent, has taken on an enemy who's taken 6 hits from Tidal Strength, and Undercurrent deals 240% damage, and if you combine that well, and she basically targets the enemy, hits your entire team with her wave, gives them all of them the buff running tight, and then you get Undercurrent every time. You get a ton of CC from her, you get a ton of magic damage from her, and she's often even used in boss battles to enhance the damage you can deal to a boss, especially in battle drills. She saw some use and is pretty nice here actually. The only problem with her really, she is a bit off meta. Like, she usually falls out of the team, can't really keep up with damage dealers like Lily May, and if you are in a true damage meta, dealing a ton of magic damage isn't too great. So the most play she sees is often at the beginning of a season and later on a bit less. In battle drills, you may see her for a longer time, as she's not really a must-have, but every so often you notice that you would really like to have her. Against Zed Sahara, the last season's end boss, she was a big asset in the Lightbearer team and enabled you to deal a ton of damage, and I think some people really lost their top spot there just because they weren't able or didn't have her in their team. if you're talking about the upgrade level, her M+, in my opinion, Mythic Plus is a must-have. This undercurrent thing, if you want to use her, is insane, so definitely want to go to that point if you buy her. The Supreme Plus is a very nice upgrade for that. We reduce magic def, which of course enhances all of our damage and makes it way easier to get high scores on bosses. It is not a must-have and it's not mechanically necessary for her, but it's definitely a nice upgrade that you don't want to miss out on. So I would definitely recommend Mythic Plus, but if you can and if you have the capacity to do so, Supreme Plus is a great thing for her. Hero number 2 on the list is Hewynn, and Hewynn is one of the healers that at the beginning, and if you maybe watched some earlier videos about the Arena store, might have flown a little bit under the radar. I remember a lot of videos at the beginning kind of saying, okay, she's like really not in the meta, she's really not used that much, and you should probably rather go for Smokey, and if you're Smokey, you don't need her anyway. This has kind of changed now in Season 2. If we look over her skills, we can see that her main focus is on healing. You don't see damage in her ult, which is a rarity, of course, and not many heroes don't deal damage with their ult. She heals, and that kind of made her a little bit bad. At the beginning, many people said, okay, she doesn't really enhance your damage in boss fights, which is kind of what you want, and of course, yeah, you want Mikola, you want your Smokey maybe, but Hewynn found her use in different situations where you want to survive a lot of damage. We saw her in the beginning of the season in different Dream Realm boss teams. In some AFK teams, she's used to provide sustains, to revive survivability, because she has many abilities that do so, while the first two abilities really only grant heal. It becomes very interesting once we have Revitalize. She heals an ally if the HP is below 50%, and then this effect can trigger once every 8 seconds, but we can reduce it with skill power, and then we have debuffs that can be dispelled. She really does a lot more than healing. Removing debuffs is very nice, and having this extra heal when a hero falls below 50% HP is already really insane. But the really insane part, or the most insane part, is once we get the Mythic Plus. And the Mythic Plus makes her unaffected during the casting of her ult, which is nice, so she won't be CC'd during that time. It's pretty good. But we also get all allies take 30% less damage, later upgrade to 32% less damage, and at plus 10 it really gets insane, because we get 34% less damage taken, and we receive the buffs from Revitalize. Well, if you remember a second ago, I said this is kind of nice because we start to dispel debuffs, we get heals, we get all of that. So at Mythic Plus, she starts providing a ton of damage reduction, which is a very important stat, a very nice stat to keep your heroes alive, making it not only easier for your heroes to stay alive on the board, taking less damage and being healed up by Hewynn at the same time, but also with the removal of the debuffs, there's really nothing that hinders them from doing top damage. So this Mythic Plus is one of the strongest Mythic Plus skills I would say we have in the game in terms of keeping your team alive. So in this season, or also towards the end of the last season, players started using her more in AFK stages, and I think the value and the general recognition of her has changed, and now she's considered kind of a bit of a better hero than she was before, where people mostly said, okay, Smokey's better, she's just a secondary healer, if you have her or not doesn't really matter. Her Mythic Supreme Plus is also very nice ability, doesn't really change her mechanically, but this is also a little bit of a damage buff, because a healed ally 30% haste buff, and haste, one of the most important stats in the game. Just getting this is definitely a nice thing, so you get a very nice combination with that. I would, for this 30 haste, because I think it is indeed a huge buff, I would recommend getting her to Supreme Plus, and overall, if you use her in a team, you mostly do it because you want to make the team more tanky. Having her squishy, because as she is she's on a lower level or lower ascension state, doesn't really make too much sense in this situation. So she should have a little bit of tankiness, and I think having her the max possible stats through Supreme Plus in that case is a very wise choice. So she's a great hero that is now more in the meta than before. So coming to number 3. Number 3 is Brutus. Brutus, from the Mauler faction, one of the more prominent heroes from the last season, Season 1, where he was one of the, well, main protagonists, we could say. And And he is a hero that was recommended from the start and is still recommended for the same reason, really. He's a bit more of a tool rather than a damage dealer or support. I think we can say that. The reason for that is he was never really used to deal damage. He doesn't deal very good damage. The main thing he can do is once you enter very difficult stages where your heroes basically get one-shot, he doesn't get one-shot. He has two kinds of immunities that he can get. The first immunity that you will commonly see is actually from his third ability. Brutus is immune to the first fatal blow he receives. So once he actually receives the damage that is supposed to off him, to kill him, he is then immune to all damage and becomes ineffective for 5 seconds. So he can't be CC'd and is immune to damage during that time, which is shown by a little shield around him. This is of course pretty great. It is pretty great for the reason that he can still be in the front, he can still tank, and he is tanky for those 5+1 seconds, the +1 seconds depending on the skill power that he has, and even might be a little bit more immune because he can get an ult, and during that time he's also damage immune. So if he reaches an ult during that time, you saw maybe some videos of PvE enemies, mostly PvE enemy Brutus being most immune for literally 30-40 seconds with his active skill. Most of the time, though, you will have those 5 seconds. And 5 seconds can be a lot. If you were otherwise completely destroyed and maybe all your heroes would be one-shot, a hero being able to survive 5 seconds, to survive 30-40 hits in that time is insane. And the best thing about this is cheap. This is really, really cheap because you only need a single copy of him to unlock this ability. This is within the first 3 skills, so it's just a single copy and we will have that. And if he gets one shot anyway, well, what does it matter if he has low stats? The other thing would be if he could survive a few hits. Then, of course, it would be better to have him at a higher state, but usually when you use him, he doesn't really survive a whole lot. He just gets hit, his ability activates, and then you have your 5 seconds to get whatever started that you want. Maybe you want to cast a Hewynn ult, where we just talked about, or want to get some other things going, some CC. You have that time to do that. On the later stages, he gets some life drain, which is supposed to basically allow him to get a little bit of a comeback. So like he activates his ability, becomes immune, then activates his ult and starts spinning and gets life drain, so he recovers to full HP, which is nice in a situation where he could usually survive and is just basically with multiple hits taken down by the enemies and then gets a comeback and needs to be hit multiple times again. It's usually just not the use he sees. He's mostly used for his immunity and to take the first hits. So he just gets punched, which is rather mean now that I think about this. His Mythic Plus plays into the normal idea of this hero, not into the use that we have, so we don't really need this. His Supreme Plus, however, grants us an extra second of immunity, so that's 25 seconds. The investment, of course, over a single copy of Brutus is insane for this extra second. The extra second can be valuable. It is less valuable actually towards the end of the season because we get this +1 seconds through Mythic Charms. At least we got it last season. And last season this was nice because it also got buffed through skill power. So you got an extra 3 seconds if you had that, plus the 1 second there, so extra 4 seconds, which was great. This season it doesn't, so it really is 1 second. And if you get full skill power, you have 8 seconds there, effectively diminishing the buff to a 12.5% buff, which is not too insane. So I would say last season Supreme Plus was a must-have. This season you are fine actually with a single copy. So I definitely recommend getting a single copy of this guy. Coming to number 4, I think. And number 4 is Rowan. You might have actually seen a video of him yesterday. Yesterday I talked about the infinite energy strategy with Rowan, and well, this is kind of an insane strategy and something you should definitely know about. I will not describe it in detail right now, but I will reference it, so maybe watch the video about Rowan as well if you wonder about him. Infinite energy Rowan. Rowan is also not a damage dealer. He's a support hero and he has a very specific use as a support hero. His main thing is to recover energy, and this now sees a lot of use actually in AFK stages, mainly because he's used to feed Ulmus and Iron. And also Arden and Carolina. Arden and Carolina to deal damage, Ulmus and Iron to CC. Because Iron, the more often he can move the enemies around, the better it is. When Ulmus slams the ground, he also CCs the enemies. So this is a great combination, and basically the combination of Ulmus and Iron, if you don't know about them, definitely something you should look up. It's quite insane. And maybe something I should make a video about too. He just recovers energy with his ult. But energy is used for so many things. This is such a great skill because, well, you need energy to do ults. Ults are the strongest part of a hero, and usually what keeps them in game. So the more ults your team can cast, the longer they usually stay alive. Most support heroes provide their defense effect with their ults. We just saw Hewynn as an example. If you can get Brutus to do more ults, he's basically perma-immune. Fresto recovers all his HP basically. And there are many great examples for strong ults. So getting more of them, kinda great. If you use the infinite energy method for Rowan and are able to do that, even greater. The rest of his kit is not bad. It is mainly aimed towards giving very limited survivability. You have to read up on his skills quite a bit. If you just throw him into the battle for the energy recovery, that's okay. But you can really do some more stuff with it if you place him in the right position and he starts recovering the energy, HP. He's really able to give a pretty massive HP instant recovery to your heroes if you use him in the right way. It is not really worth it, in my opinion, to go for that. I think his main thing is still really the energy, and I don't think this perception of him has really changed. I don't see it changing very soon. Some extra haste from the Legendary Plus is of course nice, because we want to have him at his ult as fast as possible. Here we have a nice thing with the FizzF and MDef buff in the Mythic Plus. It is okay-ish in my opinion. It is not really insane. It is a decent upgrade for the survivability of the team if you want to go for that. The S Plus gives you another health potion, which is good. It is an okay-ish upgrade. It really doesn't add too much to his main use. It is just nice to get some extra team survivability. Is it a must-have? Not really. He's usually behind your heroes. He tends to be like, place himself in the middle, which can be a bit problematic. If you fight melee heroes, of course, it's not that bad. If you fight ranged heroes or something like a Dahnie, he can punch through your hero line, your tank line, and just hit him accidentally, or something like a Cecia could hit him accidentally. So you have to think about whether or not you want to have some extra stats maybe on him, because he's a little bit squishy for a healer really. While Smokey heals himself all the time, Rowan really rarely does so you can lose him quite easily. I think it is a good position to have him at like Mythic Plus. I personally upgrade to Supreme Plus, I'm happy with that. I think at least Legendary Plus, get the haste just so you can get your energy faster, because this really enhances his main ability of giving you energy. Haste is nice for that. And if you have the means and if you have it, you can upgrade him to Mythic Plus. And maybe a while later, through some random copy pulls, you might get him to Supreme Plus. I think this is the proper way to achieve this. But this is a great hero nonetheless, and one of the heroes that is currently really used for AFK stages. Hero number 5 is actually Lumont. Yeah, he was memed a little bit upon. Like, people were calling him bad and the worst hero in the game, basically. And I think the perception has changed a little bit. In the development towards Season 2, I saw him being used sometimes. Some people are really fans of him. He was used in the Smokey strategy as well. Smokey clear strategy. I have a video about that as well. If you search for it, is basically a strategy where you use a mechanic of Smokey. That happens after Smokey casts his ult 3 times. He does a big blue area that is able to clear full stages of enemies. So pretty good, but you need to move the enemies around for that a little bit. And Lumont is a nice tool for that, which we can see in his skills. Wilder faction as well, a tank. And one of the heroes where I actually don't even have him at Mythic Plus. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't really like Lumont. As an enemy, he can be kind of annoying because he moves you around the whole battlefield. His thing is basically, yeah, he charges at a tile and every enemy in his path doesn't really get knocked back. I think this is the wrong way to say it really in his skills. Dragged along would be probably the right way to say it. Because he basically pulls all of your enemies and targets them or drags them across the entire battlefield, which is a weird thing and a very weird mechanic that then happens because you kind of struggle to deal damage during that time. And even your melee heroes, well, they are no longer close to their original target, so they specifically struggle. Your ranged heroes might still be able to do something, but he also has taunts, so they might just target him. In theory, that is really not a bad ability. If it weren't for, well, most of the time he's just not tanky enough to tank all of that taunt that he pulled on him. He basically taunts your entire team, and then, well, if you have a Lily May in your team, that usually ends quite badly. Yes, a nice ability to give him a shield. He has a little bit of CC in his Mythic Plus and some haste in his Legendary Plus. In his Mythic Plus we see the CC where he stomps the enemies to the ground. If you run him together with Ulmus, the CC can be meaningful. The attack reduction is decent, but yeah, like not too great. The biggest part of his Mythic Plus is really Lumont is unaffected by casting the skill, so he gains time where he is unaffected, which is pretty good. So if you want to use him, you can use that. I don't see him used too often anymore. I think I see him used less now in Season 2 than towards the end of Season 1. Towards the end of Season 1, where the Smoky strategy was a lot more common, I feel like, I saw him used a bit more. Keep in mind, in the initial strategy with Smoky, Lumont could be replaced. You could instead use Iron or Cassadee to move the enemies to the side. This also worked on many stages, and if you didn't, you needed to wait a little bit, and then it worked still. So while he was a very good choice for that, in many stages it was just replaceable by more common heroes and heroes you should have on your account. So the investment in Lumont is really not that the problem, because he is weak in that sense. I think his skill set is decent. It's mostly that we have other heroes that can fulfill the same purpose as he does. So that is usually why I say don't really get him, why I didn't get him now, because we just can get Cassadee, who has more use than him, we can get Iron, who has more use than him, and they all can move enemies around, and you can manually target their ults to pull enemies into whichever direction you want. So that is the thing there. Regarding M Plus or Supreme Plus, I mean, it's nice to have a tank that recovers HP, so you can get the Supreme Plus. I think Mythic Plus is something you should have if you want to use him, so that is a minimum. Keep in mind, he is a tank, so you really want all the stats on him that you can get, so probably you would go for Supreme Plus, but that's a massive investment into a hero that is, in my opinion, just not worth it. Coming in at number 6, we have Igor. Igor is an interesting one. I had to think about this a little bit in the preparation of this video. I have Igor. I got him in the last season. He was one of the targets that I really wanted to get because he was used as one of the stronger PvP heroes at that time, and has a very interesting ability set that makes him able to stick out and be a little bit annoying in PvP at times. The thing is, you don't really see him anymore. Like, you saw him a lot in Season 1, you saw him a lot especially at the release time of AFK Journey, the global release, and right now in PvP I don't see Igor being used at all. He's mostly a PvE enemy that is really annoying. His main thing are those tombstones. You can see he stands on a tombstone, and while he's on the tombstone you basically can't kill him. You can't kill him, so this is the first thing he does. He summons a tombstone, this tombstone stands somewhere, and he moves between the tombstones, and until the tombstones are all gone, you really can't defeat him. So the only way to defeat an Igor that still has tombstones left is an insta-kill ability, like Odie, for example, with his poison. And in PvP, you can imagine if you don't run Odie and this guy summons a bunch of tombstones, it's every time an enemy hero loses 40% of their HP when he summons a tombstone. Yeah, this is annoying. Like, you can have 10 tombstones on the battlefield and suddenly you need 20 seconds to defeat this guy, and especially if you are the attacker, you might just run out of time before you really defeat him. He deals a little bit of damage, it's not too insane, he's not like the huge damage dealer like Talene, but still pretty decent. And he has Steadfast while he's on a tombstone, so cannot be knocked in the air, knocked back, or involuntarily moved, making him immune to the more common iron teams as well. So in that sense, he was a bit of a menace. Right now, you don't see him. He has 0 PvE use, and I don't know a single person on my server that plays a team with him at the moment in PvP. He was just a little bit pushed out of the meta. I would not necessarily recommend getting him at the moment, just because there's so little use for him. And he is one of the heroes that, in my opinion, requires the Supreme Plus update, which we'll see in a second. On Legendary Plus, he gains a little bit of life drain, which is nice. Having some life drain is always a good thing. So definitely, I think, a nice upgrade for him. On Mythic Plus, he mainly gets extra damage. And we have reduces targets healing received by 50%, which is in its way a nice tool. Because we have 50% reduced healing received if you fight a healer team and you reduce the healing they receive by 50%, it can be very, very bad for the opponent, because a lot of his heroes or a lot of his kit can be basically disabled with it. There is the bigger whale option right now of using Dunlinger to receive basically minus 100% healing received at that point. So yeah, anti-heal is now also on Celestials and Hypogeans, which makes it, well, it's difficult to achieve for most players. If you have it, you definitely won't use Igor for that purpose. The interesting thing of this Supreme Plus thing is he summons an extra tombstone with Funeral Ring. And I made the experience that at some times when the battle starts, he can just be instantly defeated if he doesn't have this extra tombstone. I noticed this in a lot of PvP fights. If he gets targeted early on, doesn't have many tombstones, not much damage has happened, he didn't have many opportunities to summon tombstones, he might be instantly defeated. And this extra tombstone gives him actually quite a bit more time, and makes it more likely he gets to be in the position where he has many more tombstones that he summons, and gets to this position where he's difficult to defeat. And I think for that I would really recommend Supreme Plus on him, even though I would not necessarily recommend summoning for him at all at the moment, as he doesn't provide much in terms of your account progress. He's not in the PvP meta right now. PvE, we don't see him. Maybe you can get him in the Graveborn tower, but even there I don't really see him, honestly. And yeah, that kind of pushes him to the side, in my opinion. Last 4 heroes, off to the next one. Cecia, another Graveborn hero. One of the heroes you receive right at the start of the game. You're guaranteed to get 1 copy of Cecia, which is why most people are pretty familiar with her. Because compared to Chippy and Hemi and Waylon, she's kind of a monster, because she's actually a pretty good hero overall. And just loses her purpose a little bit in endgame, and it gets a little bit more limited. Still, let's look into her skills. So Cecia is a marksman. It's confusing in my opinion, because she really doesn't feel like a marksman, with physical damage, 5 range, and really doesn't deal most of the damage she deals by herself. She has a little bit of a summon for that called Mr. Carlyle. That is her ult. She summons Mr. Carlyle on the battlefield, and Mr. Carlyle does most of the stuff. Wherever Mr. Carlyle is summoned, she also sees the enemy, and this is a use she actually sees a little bit more in AFK stages. I saw some clears, especially with low power in AFK stages, where they added a Cecia to the team. A Cecia accompanied maybe by a Rowan that gives her energy and lets her cast Mr. Carlyle multiple times. And Mr. Carlyle can only be on the board 1 time, but every time he is summoned, he basically will entangle the enemies around him, making her a pretty nice CC hero actually, aside from being, well, pretty strong as well, because Mr. Carlyle actually does a decent amount of damage. So you get CC, you get some damage, pretty good hero overall. She's just a bit outscaled later on. So if you get to the end game, you won't see many players use her. In PvP, she's a bit too slow. In PvE, you just usually tend to go for better options. Either you go for like an Iron CC team or something with Fresto and maybe a Smokey that is just able to deal more damage than her. And go for a little bit more specific winning conditions. Your CC is a little bit too small or too unreliable, I would say, to really make it work. And then it's a bit more meta to use something like Iron Ulmus to get the proper CC on an enemy. In In regards to her upgrade state, we get some nice attack speed on the Legendary Plus with the Hero Focus, which I would recommend getting. Makes it a bit easier to get to her ult faster and to recover energy a little bit later once Mr. Kala is on the battlefield. So getting a little bit more attack speed is actually kind of nice for her, definitely something you would want to have. Then we get to the Mythic Plus, and there she entangles an enemy with Reinforced Thorns. It's actually not that bad, like it doesn't sound too insane because we have 60 damage per second and some death absorption, which is 1.5% per second, which is not too insane actually. The absorption is a little bit too low in my opinion. But the thing is, she CCs an enemy, which is nice, because we use her for CC quite often, and getting a little bit of extra CC is actually quite good every 15 seconds. So not too bad. Is something you can get. Is it required for her to do her purpose? Not really. It is an okayish upgrade that just provides some extra CC, and usually she puts it on the nearest hero, which can be kind of nice. If you have something that rushes towards you and really could deal a ton of damage, and she CCs it, well, it's good. It's good. On Enhanced Force, we reduce the required normal attacks to trigger Agonizing Puncture. Agonizing Puncture is this ability where she upgrades her normal attack used, and it does a little bit more damage. I'm not a big fan, actually. I'm not a big fan. It's nice that she gets some extra damage there. But it's also not too insane. And if I thought about getting like 2 copies of Cecia to unlock that, or if I rather go for another hero and maybe get my copies of Iron to get him to Mythic Plus, well, definitely the choice is Iron or Rowan or some other hero that provides some real upgrade there. The only reason for me that I could see to upgrade her further, Mr. Carlisle stats are based on her stats. So upgrading her stats makes Mr. Carlisle strongest. If you use her in PvE, yeah, you kind of want to upgrade her stats, and that of course is also done through upgrading her to Supreme Plus, even though the abilities are not that great. Then again, it kind of should be your goal to replace her. But I don't think it's bad if you have like the heroes that we are going to mention towards the end in the summary, that are must-gets. If you have those already and you then say, okay, I just take the next copies that I get and upgrade my Cecia, I think you're doing alright. I think you're doing alright actually. So I wouldn't blame you for doing that. That being said, decent hero, good damage, one of the better ones on the list. Last 3 heroes, and spoiler, in my opinion, only one good one remains. And we are looking at Granny Dahnie for the moment, who's not the good hero. She was once really hyped, and now she's just gone. That is kind of an interesting story in itself. Granny Dahnie was once called the second best tank in the game, which was at the time of the global release. There was Thorin on number 1 for most people, and then you had Granny Dahnie, which already at that time made her see limited use actually. But if you had a wilder team, maybe you just plug her in to have some tanking capabilities. And that is already the big problem. If you have a wilder team and you want some tanking capabilities, and a wilder team usually includes Iron, well, then you use Ulmus, who is not on that list, but it's an 8 here. It's pretty okayish to get actually. And he has very nice synergy with Iron. Granny, not really. Granny is a very good tank. She's good at tanking. She's really good at what tanks are supposed to do, which is tanking damage. And not really too much beyond that. She has a little bit of heal with her ult. She has some nice upgrades on Legendary Plus, where we have a Vitality increase there. We have a very great Mythic Plus actually, once she falls below 50% HP. This shield here grows bigger, her Fizz Def and M Def is increased substantially, she's recovering a ton of HP, and the skill lasts for 12 seconds. You can also upgrade her to +10 to gain unaffected, so she is not even controlled anymore during the time of this effect, so you gain a massive control immunity time there. And that's actually just a great ability overall. It's a great ability if you want to have a tank that is really, really tanky, and get her to Mythic Plus, and you will be very happy with the results, because she really just doesn't die very fast. Takes some time. The only problem really was, well, Thorin can also deal a ton of damage, has some nice support abilities, can enhance the damage enemy heroes take, and also Well, I mean, if you fought him, you know he's a monster sometimes. And then we got Fresto, Celestial Hypogene hero, tank, tons of damage, true damage, instant heals, just overall the better hero. And suddenly she was like place 4 best tank. And place 4 best tank is not the hero you put in your team. Especially not if it's an S tier hero. You could get Thorin as easily as her. You can get Ulmus probably easier. You don't even have to get Ulmus like very actively. You put him on your wish list in all your recruitment in the A tier tab, which you can easily go do, and then you just get him and don't have to like compromise your gain of Lily May and Iron copies, which you would otherwise pretty much do unless you place her into the epic recruitment, which I wouldn't recommend. So there are just more important heroes out there to get. She's really a hero, like if you look at the list right now, you would probably only get her once you got all the S tiers in like Wilder. We can check out the list there. And right now, if we go into all hero recruitment wish list and check Wilder, there are some other good ones. We talked about Hewynn being great. Flora Bell is an insane hero. You definitely want Iron. You absolutely want Lily May. And Bryon versus her will be a discussion. So you have other slots where it's much easier to get in a tank. Because once you have Carolina and Ludovic, well, it's super easy to get your Thorin in there. Or just put a Thorin in there. Or just use your Brutus as a tank. We talked about this a second ago. So many options. To just not use Granny, and that has pushed her literally out of meta, while not being a bad tank. She's probably one of the tankiest tanks out there, but still just not used anymore because there's nothing else really she provides for the team. Second to last hero, Atalanta. I wouldn't be surprised if you knew nothing about her. Like, honestly, I had to read up a little bit on her because I felt like I should know more details about her. But she just sees no use. It's like basically zero. The only place where you really sometimes see her being used is in the Lightbearer Tower, because Lightbearer lacks a little bit of good heroes. There are a lot of Lightbearer heroes, but there are not a lot of good Lightbearer heroes. And she does deal decent damage, especially in the last season. She summoned a duplicate of herself. In PvE, you definitely wanted to target enemy Atalanta first, get rid of her. Her ult is kind of nice. She has some stun in her ult, she has some damage in her ult, Scorching Gift is triggered, which is this ability, so we get a little bit of an explosion there as well. It's pretty cool, honestly. And then she has Sweet Encounter, which is also a very nice ability. She swings her whip at an enemy, knocking them back 2 tiles, immobilizing them. So a lot of good stuff, and the nice thing is she also has different ways to trigger Sweet Encounter. So it's not even that bad. Pretty high multipliers we see here. We see stun, we see immobilize, we see some knockback, which could be comboed with Ulmus. So there is some good stuff happening here. Still overall just falls behind a lot of other heroes. A place where I can see them, I mean, we talked about Rowan Infinite Energy, so well, why not put her in the team? I mean, she is a decent choice. We have a Haste buff here on Legendary Plus, which you should get. Haste buff's always good. On Mythic Plus, we get the option to cast Sweet Encounter 2 times in a row when a battle starts, and we just talked about Sweet Encounter. A lot of good stuff in there. Knockback, Mobilize, all of that is in there, plus decent damage, so you get that 2 times at the beginning. We get damage increase there, and if you get her to plus 10, which is an investment I didn't do yet, she also steals attack and fist there from the target, which, I mean, she does it target activated 2 times at the beginning of the battle, and then every 12 seconds, so pretty good actually. And you get kind of some nice extra stats there if she targets some high attack enemies. Pretty good. So very nice M+ as well if you want to invest into her. And then we have 10% max HP recovery every time an enemy is hit by Wild Sniper. Wild Sniper is her ult. So takes some time. I mean, it's a nice recovery, but I doubt she will be able to survive without external help. So the Supreme Plus, in my opinion, is not a must-have. In general, she's not really a must-have. She's nice to have, but even against that Sahara, the last season boss, she wasn't used because there were just better options even in the Lightbearer faction for that. But in general, for Lightbearer Tower, she's pretty decent, and maybe I could see her being some Infinite Energy Rowan team, just because we have the stun here. And then maybe if she casts one ult after the other, also the heal could be nice. So I think she's more like a fun project other than a really, very serious must-have hero. She's just a hero. Okay, I have everything. Now why not get Atalanta? And if you are at that point, I don't think the question of I need her Mythic Plus or Supreme Plus is really that important, because you will get her as one of the later heroes anyway. You won't get her at the start, you won't get her when your Iron isn't Supreme Plus. You will have a lot of Supreme Plus heroes, maybe even unlock Paragon, and then you will go and say, okay, now I get Atalanta because I got everything else. That is the reality of it, and at that point you will go for Supreme Plus as well, just because, well, you get the extra heal, and if you build a meme team with Rowan or something, then you will put her in there. But that's really about it. Last hero from this list, and it is Bryon. Bryon, actually a very cool hero. He has always been off meta. I don't know. Like, the only time where I probably saw him really shine and be like a hero you needed to have was against that Sahara, the last season end boss. Because he dealt a ton of damage against bosses. He is a pretty decent boss damage dealer, actually, hitting a lot of magic damage out there. And against that Sahara, he was one of the main damage dealers of the Wilder faction. So it's not really a pushover. It's a pretty serious hero we have right here. He's just always like a tad bit too weak to make it into most teams. It's always like this little bit that's missing. And it's a bit like Cassadee in that sense. Like being a top hero of your own faction and still seeing barely any play. It's a bit cruel. So let's shine some light on his abilities. His main thing is his bird, falcon, whatever you are supposed to be. And this guy deals actually a ton of damage. He summons him when a battle starts. He gets 1000 initial energy at the beginning, and his active is to summon the Falcon, which continuously drains energy. And this Falcon deals a ton of damage actually. You might have actually fought him in PvE in an AFK stage, and he would probably destroy you. He's very annoying to deal with in AFK stages. Because he just targets your enemies, the bird flies over, deals a ton of damage, and more than once I've seen him nuke my backline before I could do anything when I pushed into higher stages, and you really have to adjust your team in an annoying manner to deal with that. He gets a lot of extra stuff in here, reducing haste, we get thunderbolts, and he also has some other abilities that deal a ton of damage. Leaf Blade Gale seems like not much, but it's 4 magic leaves that attack the target and deal 100% damage. So we have a 400% hit basically there. Negative point, 14-second cooldown. Super long. Super long. Initial cooldown is very low though, so we have like a super burst at the beginning, and then for the next 14 seconds this ability is basically gone. This is a lot longer cooldown than most other heroes have. Iron on the same slot ability has like a 7-second cooldown, so that is vastly different. Shadow Flash, Bryon's normal attacks and skill deal 2 times damage 2 times, absorbing targets 50 energy, so that is a very nice passive skill that is just in there. Double damage for all normal attacks, and we just get energy absorption, so he needs a ton of energy for his ult actually, so 1000 energy ult is pretty crazy. But through this 50 energy absorption, this is actually not bad. It's actually not bad, so kind of nice. Then we have the HP, that extra HP damage, and we have a skill interruption effect. Attacks such as dizzy, frozen, etc. So also pretty nice. So like a lot of nice things that are hidden in like his sub skills, which is very interesting. We have again a legendary plus with haste that you definitely want to pick up. We have tactic strike, which lets a loner deal more damage. The interesting thing here is not really the extra damage, it is the +5 ability. When Bryon takes a fatal blow for the first time, Ilona consumes all energy block. The fatal damage restores 200 HP for Bryon, and for the next 5 seconds he cannot be targeted and recovers HP. Keep in mind, cannot be targeted does not mean cannot be killed. Cannot be targeted might still mean that he gets hit by, I don't know, an iron bolt or something like that, where he just happens to be in the area. So It is not that he's completely immune, he might just get still insta-killed right after the fatal damage was absorbed. It takes away a lot of his damage though, because Ilona then departs from the battlefield, so basically he then has no more ult, he cannot use his ult for 10 seconds then, which is devastating at that point. So, I mean, it's better than him being gone, but still not that nice if it happens. So it's a very good Mythic Plus skill and one you should probably pick up. And then we have Enhanced Force. Enhanced Force seems so great because it says generates 2 leaves beside Alona if the Falcon is on the battlefield when Leaf Blade Gale is cast. And we see what the leaves do really here. It's 100% damage. So once Leaf Blade Gale is cast, we basically get 6 of those leaves, bringing the skill to 600% damage, which is a nice damage increase. I just don't like that the cooldown of the skill is so long. So in that regard, yeah, I'm not too sure about the Supreme Plus. I think it's okay-ish. It is a huge hit though. It is a huge hit. I will give it an okay-ish if you want to focus on Bryon. I think like him being that off meta, you probably would get him like before something like Atalanta. But still, it's not like a main focus hero. And if you get him, you won't get all of the damage that you can that he can have, and then probably upgrade him to Supreme Plus anyway. So yeah, that being said, those were really all of the heroes that are in there. Let's give you guys a little bit of a summary. Summary time. So I categorized it in basically 4 categories for this. I didn't really want to make a tier list with like S and A. I'm not a friend of this. I think for some of those heroes that would just be wrong. Should I say Brutus is an S tier? Yeah, he has good use, but he's a tool. Like Screwdriver is better than Hammer doesn't make sense. So I think you should get 3 of those heroes are must gets. Those are the heroes that should be on every single account in my opinion. If I go into a proxy battle or something, I'm looking for those heroes. And this is for once Hewynn. We saw the insane heal she can provide, the insane extra utility, the has the damage reduction. Those are all the things that make her excel. We have Brutus. As I said, you only need a single copy of him. You can invest into Supreme Plus, it is optional. His immunity to damage makes him the perfect tank for the endgame and for high pushing into late stages. If you still want to run a burst team, sometimes including a Brutus can just be an insane trick. And the last one is Rowan actually. Rowan providing a ton of energy is a very nice tool to make different teams work. We saw an Iron Ulmus comp that can be very insane. And there is an infinite energy trick at the moment that is not a bug, it's just a faction skill of the Lightbearer faction that you can make use of. Definitely watch the video I posted on that. And he is definitely something that should be on every single account and one of the heroes that in his uniqueness really provides a great boost to your team. Then we have strong off-meta heroes. Just heroes that are super strong but are not in the meta right now. Starting off, I see Cassadee in this list. Cassadee providing an insane magic damage boost to the entire team, reducing the magic defense of the enemy if you have her at Supreme Plus, and also providing a ton of CC, making her one of the best Lightbearer heroes and still not being used in really any team at the moment. The other one, we just talked about him, is Bryon, one of the best heroes of the Wilder faction actually, providing also a ton of magic damage. It's a little bit weird to use at the first time, but a super strong hero and still in no team at the moment. And then we have Cecia. Cecia, the hero most people get at the start, or everybody gets at the start, and people usually like because she's just a great damage boost or a great boost to your account at the beginning. So people like to invest in her, and I think it's not bad to do that. She's great for the start. Picking up a copy here is not a bad thing. So a very good hero actually. Those 3 heroes that I now said, those are the 3 strong off-meta picks. I think it's never bad if you put them on your account. They are not needed to build any of the meta teams really, but sometimes it is great to have them on your account, especially against that Sahara, the last season boss. It would have been great, I think, to have any of those 3 heroes. They were all major assets for that because we needed to make use of many more heroes in a faction than we usually have. And if you fight a tower match or are in tower of the respective faction, you will often see use of these 3 heroes. Off meta, and so not strong, also 3 heroes. The first one, bit of a controversial pick, I think Granny Dahnie. I think Granny Dahnie, I think for the Wilder faction as a tank, she's alright, but she got just outscaled by Ulmus. She's a tanky tank, which we talked about. She's just one of the best heroes at tanking, but at the same time just sees zero use anymore. Because every time you want to put a Wilder tank into a team, you use Ulmus. Every time you want to put a tank in general into the team, people use Fresto now, or Thorin, and there are just so many better choices that she just fell completely out of the meta. If you just want a strong Wilder tank that can tank a lot of damage, you can get her. She's not a bad hero in that sense. I just wouldn't categorize her as super strong. Igor is the next pick for that off-meta list. Igor was used a ton in PvP, was one of the meta heroes there, and right now you don't see him at all. Doesn't mean he can't make a comeback. His ability was pretty interesting, but I think it was a little bit of the release of Lily May as well. Not exactly countering his ult, but Lily May provides a ton of hits on him, and he can't take that very well. And with the rise of more heroes like Talene also burns down his tombstones, there were just a little bit too many counters in the meta for him to really be in there. And if he's not in PvP, then this guy is nowhere. He's not seen in the Graveborn Tower, he's not seen in any PvE stages, so basically this guy's gone. Maybe find some use in some secondary Supreme Arena team, and that's about it. Last choice for the off-meta, Atalanta. Great damage, decent light bearer hero, some use, bit overlooked in my opinion, but still nowhere to be seen, so is in the off-meta. And off-meta heroes in general, I would just not recommend getting at all. You can get them once you have everything else. Strong off-meta is like just a decent pick, and must-gets you should focus on to the extent that I described in the text or in the part about the hero itself. And then we have, basically, he's gone. Lumont. Just, I don't see it. I don't see it. Lumont is just like, if you pick a copy of Lumont from this, I think you do something wrong. And this is the only hero where I feel like this. Because Lumont's only thing that he does is moving heroes around the board. And while he was used in some teams for that, there were also always clears where the same was achieved with something like an Iron. A hero that is much more meta and is just more in the main game and in the list of heroes you should use, while, well, Lumont really isn't. So going out of your way, spending your arena coins to get Lumont when you could get those other heroes on the list, I think that is the only one where I would really say it's a mistake. If you get a Cassadee copy, I would say, yeah, it's cool. Enjoy Cassadee, is a great hero. If you get an Igor copy, bit of meta made, but, well, okay. Maybe you want to build some fun Graveborn team, but if you get Lumont, yeah, they say, well, better get something else. So, yeah, the only hero there. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I helped a lot of you guys with this video. Got a little bit long, but as I said, we had the timestamps. If you want to see more of my videos, I promise they are not usually that long, then maybe subscribe to this channel. I would really appreciate it. And with that, I wish you a great day. We'll see us in the next one.